Let me take you through the guided notes of 4.3. Make sure you realize you have the skills to do this. The only new part is that we're going to be dealing with parallel lines. So parallel lines, we're going to learn that they have the same exact slope. Okay, to be parallel lines, they never intersect. They're going to be exactly the same. So if one line has a slope of 2, the other line's going to have a slope of 2. And then perpendicular, that's where two lines intersect and form a 90-degree angle. And what we're going to see is that the relationship between the slopes have to be opposite and reciprocals. Okay, so if one is 2, then the other one has to be its opposite, which would be a negative, and then flip 2 to a 1/2. Okay, so we're going to see that. So determine which lines are parallel. Parallel lines have to have the exact same slope. So I'm just going to quickly find the slope of each of these. Now they give us ordered pairs, but I can just count down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this first line has a slope of -1/5. Okay, where this line right here has a slope of down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4. So they are not parallel. Okay, but then this bottom line has a slope of down 1 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're going to see that lines A and C, and we can write it like this. A, here's our universal symbol for parallel. A is parallel to C because they have the exact same slope. Okay? So then what we're going to do, and again, we did this in 4.2, write an equation of a line that passes through this random point, that's just an x and y, and is parallel to this line. Well, looking at this equation, slope-intercept form, I know the slope is 2. So right there's my slope. So to be parallel, I'm just going to use the slope of 2. It has to be the same. So y equals 2x plus b. And I just take my order pair, I replace the y with a -4, I replace the x with a 5, and we're just going to solve for b. Okay, easy equation to solve. 2 times 5 is 10. So when I subtract 10 to solve, we're going to see that b is going to be, I don't know why I subtracted 4, sorry. We have to subtract a 10 to get a -14 starting point. So now my equation is y equals 2x and minus 14. Okay, you graph this and you graph this. They will never intersect, but make sure you understand the steps. Okay, so I give you a point, I'll give you a rule. To be parallel, use the same slope. Okay, so then this monitoring progress part. Line A passes through these 2 points, line B passes through these. We're asking if they're parallel. So to figure out if they're parallel, we just have to calculate the slope. We learned this a while ago that you subtract your y's. So my y of 3 minus my y of -1 over the differences in the corresponding x's. So just be careful when you subtract a negative. Okay, so -5 minus -6 is really going to become -5 plus 6. So on the bottom, we're just going to have a 1. And then minus a negative, we're going to have a 4. So overall, the slope for the first line, line A, is a 4. And if this is identical, then they're going to be parallel. If it's different, they're not parallel. Okay, so I'm just going to take -2 minus -7. And then I'm going to take 3 minus 2. And then up top, again, if you need a calculator to help you calculate that, do it. But we're going to see that the differences in the y's, it's going to be a 5 over 1. So are they parallel? No, they have different slopes. Okay? And then this next question, write an equation of a line that passes through. So again, just same step as we did in our example 2. I'm giving you an ordered pair. And I'm giving you a rule that is in slope-intercept form, so instantly we should know the slope is 1/4. So when you look at this, we need to use a 1/4 for our rule. So I'm going to write y equals 1/4 x plus b. I'm going to replace the y with a 2. I'm going to replace the x with a -4. And we're going to solve for b. Okay, so should be easy. This right here, 1/4 times -1 is just going to, or it's going to be -4, is going to be a -1. My brain was a little too fast doing that calculation already. So you multiply, you get -1, and then to solve for b, I add, and I know my b, my y-intercept, is a 3. So putting everything together, having a slope of 1/4 and a starting point of 3, there's my rule. And once again, if you graph this, lines that will never intersect. Next part of your guided notes is going to deal with perpendicular lines. So perpendicular lines are two lines that intersect and they form a 90-degree angle. So we see right here, so they have to be non-vertical lines, and if they're perpendicular, you have negative reciprocals. So what that means is we're going to see that, for example, this line right here has a slope of -2, so it's going down 1/2. For it to be perpendicular to a slope of -2, it has to be the opposite, meaning positive, and then you flip 2. 2 is really 2/1. You make it 1/2. That's what a reciprocal is. Okay, so that's the relationship between non-vertical perpendicular lines. Okay, so typical question is going to be determine which of the lines, if any, are parallel or perpendicular. So we already talked about parallel. Parallel has the same slope. Perpendicular, they must be opposite reciprocals. So for line A, we can clearly see its slope is a 4. Okay. For B, it's going to take 2 moves to know what the slope is. So we have to solve for y. So my first move is to subtract x, and then my second move is to divide everything by 4. So once we do that, we're going to see that the number in front of the x is -1/4. Okay, so really I'm not even concerned about b, but I know the slope for line B is -1/4, which is the opposite reciprocal of A. So we're going to say A is perpendicular to B. Okay, so we'll just find the slope, see if C is parallel or perpendicular to anything. So once again, we need to solve for y. So it's going to take us, once again, 2 moves. So I added the 2x, and then we're going to divide by -8. And then you're also going to see that when you clean this up, -2/8 reduces to -1/4. So its slope is -1/4. So we're going to see that B is parallel to C, and that A is perpendicular to C. Okay, because again, A was 4. Opposite reciprocal of 4 is -1/4. Okay, so, and both B and C have the same slope, therefore they're parallel. Okay, so just make sure you understand the difference between parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, so for this next one, we're going to write our equation. We're going to use y = mx + b. So we want to be perpendicular to this. So this has a positive up 1/2. So to find its perpendicular slope, I'm going to flip this and make it negative. Since it's positive, I'm going to do the opposite. And then 1/2 is 2/1, which is simply 2. Okay, so y equals -2x plus b. I replace the x with a -3, the y with a 1. And it's not going to take long at all to figure out that b, we have to subtract 6. B is going to be a -5. So y equals -2x minus 5. Promise you, if you graph this line and you graph this line, they would form 90-degree angles. They're intersecting in a way that the angles are 90 degrees. They're called right angles. Okay, that's what makes them perpendicular. Okay, the next part. Once again, we need to know the slope of each of these lines, and once we know the slope of each lines, we can determine if they are parallel to each other or perpendicular or neither. Okay, so let's see. With this one, it requires that we subtract the 2x and divide by 6. So when we clean that up, you can reduce -2/3, which is going to be -1/3. So I know the slope of line A is negative 1/3. Here, we have a slope of 3. That's easy, because it's already in slope-intercept form. And then finally, this one, we're going to have to subtract. I need to put my y there, so it's negative 6y. Subtract the 18x and divide everything by negative 6. Okay, so once again, we're going to see that negative 18 over negative 6 is a 3. And again, this, I'm not really so concerned about the y-intercept. All I need to know is that the slope is 3. Okay, so we can clearly see that B and C are parallel. Okay, they have the exact same slope. And the fact is, a negative 1/3 and a 3 are opposite reciprocals. So A would be perpendicular to B, and A is perpendicular to C. Okay, so just make sure you understand this notation. Okay, that means parallel, that means perpendicular. Okay, that's just our universal symbol for those type of lines. Okay, finally, the last one. We want to be perpendicular to negative 3, so I do the opposite. So if I want to be perpendicular to a slope of negative 3, I must make it positive, and I must flip negative 3 as 1 over 3. So 1 over 3, and again, it has to be its opposite. So y equals 1/3 of x plus b. I know my y is a 5. I know x is a negative 3. 1/3 times negative 3 is just going to be a negative 1. When we add a 1 to both sides, we're going to see that b is 6. So y equals 1/3 x plus 6. And that's our rule if we want to be perpendicular to this. Okay, so I promise you, if you plot these, they would be forming 90-degree angles. Okay, so that's everything you need to know about parallel lines and perpendicular lines for you to be able to get big ideas 4-3 done, and then the rest of these notes. So again, this entire packet, you can check your answers, but practice so that, and then again, just don't copy down. Make sure you talk yourself through this entire packet of problems, okay? And I promise you, if you check everything, you'll know how to handle problems in 4-3. Okay, so thanks for watching. Take care.